981fm.com and iHeartStation.
Nancia, Smokehouse, it's the urban heat. Shout out to Coach Live.
Coach LA's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 with Coach La 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 La. If you got something on your mind, you can call in, you can hit a line. She the realest, ooh, she the realest. You can tap in, now I always get the business to empower you so that you can do every and anything that you want to. Kicking it with Coach LA, it's time to listen to conversations that's gonna keep you winning. Sunday nights at 10 p.m. on the urban heat, just calling. Conversations with Coach La 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 with Coach La 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 La.
Hey, what's going on, beautiful people? Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Coach La. I hope you guys are doing very, very well on this Sunday evening. You know we're radio with a purpose, and you're tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM. I want to give a huge shout out to Jen Renee Productions. She just did her Black on Black Love fashion show at Florian Hall right here in Dorchester. And I was the host alongside Mayor Thomas. And this is our second year doing that event. So it was a super dope event. All those that came out to support, I hope you enjoyed all of the fun and activities that we did, because it was super fun. So tonight, what are we talking about? Well, as you guys know, we always have conversations about mental health and how to debunk stigma around mental health. And I've been really focused in on the entrepreneurs. So I'm going to keep that trend going. And tonight we are going to talk to a lady that I have had the opportunity to meet in the online space. And she calls herself the Authority Coach, which I really like that name. She's a content marketing consultant, and she helps high achieving women who have high ticket items strategize. She's also a speaker, and she's the host of Raise Your Authority podcast. And I just really love that what she does is talk to people one-on-one on how they can show up online and stop being the best kept secret of their clients. And I think a lot of us are trying to figure that out. She also used to work for the school department. So I'm really curious of how she made this pivot from working as an assistant with special needs to becoming a marketing consultant. And I love that people can do that. So I'm hoping that she will inspire us and really talk to us about her brand. She also is going to be one of the guest speakers at the business shower that I am also emceeing in July on the 19th. So we're going to learn more about that event too. But I want to bring onto the show, without further ado, Miss Krissy Ferreira. Hey, girl.
Hey.
I'm going to turn your mic up. So you speak into the mic. I think I got you as loud as I can get you now.
Hey.
Yes, that's perfect. So I'm excited to talk to you because, one, you intrigue me. And I love being intrigued about people making pivots into entrepreneurship, especially coming from where you were working in the school department and then going into entrepreneurship and then content creation. I think a lot of people are trying to find that segue. So tell me, who is Krissy? And make sure you tell me, how did you end up in this industry, in this field?
Oh, well, first off, let me just say that it wasn't like an overnight pivot. It wasn't just something that I decided one day, I'm like, you know what, I'm going to quit my job and I'm just going to start helping people online, boost their social media presence. It was something that was years in the making, getting practice. already being in the online space. I did a lot of multi-level marketing. Some people may know what that is.
I definitely did that too. If I told you how many businesses that I was in that was multi-level marketing, you would be shocked. But I definitely did a lot of that before I got into being a therapist.
It's funny because I feel like the industry gets a lot of like hate,
Mhm.
but it was, for me, it was a great experience to learn marketing, like social media,
Mhm.
sales, and I was really able to start developing like a personal brand online, going from, I sold health products, I sold makeup online, I sold clothing. I dipped my toes in a lot of different places, and from there, as I went from one thing to the next, I was able to gain experience, build like an audience, a following online, and really find like my confidence and like my place in the online space. So I did that for about maybe 6 years before I really like dived into the whole consulting space, because as a consultant, like, you need to be an expert in that space to be able to teach other people to replicate, what you're doing. And so when it came to pivoting from the school space, it was kind of like a push for me. I felt like I was almost kind of forced to jump into it, because I did the switch back in 2020. We all know what happened that year.
Don't we? I think a lot of people got creative, I want to say inspiration, and sort of was like, oh shoot, what am I going to do?
Yeah. So going back to the who's Krissy, one thing is I'm a mom. And so back then my son was about to be 1 year old when the pandemic hit. And I was already kind of dipping my toes in the done for you social media management space. And I was working with a couple different clients on the back end, wasn't really promoting it. It was more so, hey, you have a business. Would you like some help with your social media? So I kind of get practice and, experience in that field. But when COVID hit, my son was almost 1. I wasn't too happy with my job at the time. Back then, I was, for moms understand, I was breastfeeding, exclusively pumping, and I wasn't.
Shout out to all the moms doing breastfeeding and pumping. I have a good friend that she goes in the back and she's trying to do all of that. It's definitely a lot.
It's a lot. And it was I did it for about a year, but there wasn't a lot of support, I guess is the best way to say it, having to take like a couple extra breaks during the day, not having really a designated space, having to pump in the bathroom. And my son would get sick sometimes, and then taking days out. And as a mom, you feel so much guilt the days you have to go to work when they're sick, or the days you have to call out of work, your coworkers are upset with you. So I was just already kind of miserable with that. And I just wasn't happy with, like, every day felt the same. Clock in, go to this job that I didn't really feel appreciated at. And then we only have a few hours like left with my son after I'd pick him up from the sitter. And I felt like every day was the cycle. And I was starting to feel like experience some postpartum depression at that time. And so when COVID hit, I was able to work from home, because we were all forced, to work from home. And I was able to take on, start diving into the social media management space a little bit more, partially out of, I had more time to do it, but also at that time, my husband, so another who is Krissy, I'm a wife. I've been with my husband since I was 16 years old. We've been together almost 17 years. And he lost half the hours that he used to work at that job, like almost instantly. He was an essential worker, but they weren't given as many hours. So there was also a financial stressor right there. So I felt the need to bring in an additional income at that time. And I was already kind of working the social media management side of things. And so I publicly announced it around that time that I would be taking on clients. Back at that time, it took off really fast. Like, I was actually surprised. People jumped on the bandwagon. I gained a client the very next day when I announced it. And I went like hardcore into like, all right, I want to make this work. I want to get more clients. And I hired a coach, like took a program. She showed me how to get more clients, how to promote myself. I went from 1 client to 0 clients 1 month, and then went to 2 to 4 to 6. And I was able to replace my income at the school department by August. So pandemic hit in March. I was able to replace my income in August. And so when it came time to go back to work in September, I kind of had this, okay, am I going to go back to what I was doing, or am I going to pursue this avenue? And I decided to take a risk, and I left my job. And from there, I had the agency for 2 years, and I started to do a little bit more on the mentoring side, more consulting side, started taking more high ticket clients that wanted more of one-on-one access to me, not just done for you work. And eventually I ended up pivoting out of my agency and going exclusively into consulting about 3 years in. And so again, like I said, it wasn't really like an overnight thing. It was gaining experience, testing new things, taking chances. And then eventually now I do consulting full time.
So, what's interesting about that is how life starts lifing and your back gets up against the wall, and then the creativity pops, right? And in that, I didn't hear anything about having a marketing background.
No.
So how did you learn how to manage social media? Because it sounds like you're self-taught.
It was self-taught. There was a part of self-taught when it came to expanding, because then I kind of got to create like my testing out my own strategies and figuring out my own way to support my clients as far as that goes, what works, what doesn't work when trying to get clients online. But another part of it was through those the multi-level marketing companies that I was in, there was training. Like we were taught how to post online, what type of content to post. I did a lot of trainings, took a lot of courses. So it was, without getting like an actual degree, it was kind of like training on the back end is really how I gained that experience. And then practicing, seeing what worked, what strategies worked, what strategies didn't work. It was really just trial and error. And then, getting advice from I did know other social media managers that were like mentors to me that would give me like feedback.
Got it. So what do you love about doing this work? So, because a lot of times people think they have to love it. So do you love it?
I love working with my clients. I came to a point when I was doing the done for you where I started to not love it just because it was such high demand. I was not only having to help my clients promote their business, but I also still needed to promote my own. And it was a lot of hands-on work. And we actually got to the point where I had 3 team members that were helping me. We had a full list of clients, but I got a little burnt out at one point, which is one of the reasons why I started navigating into the consulting, because I could help less clients make the same income and work less hours and have more of that work-life balance, because I did find myself kind of going back to that cycle, how I felt when I was at the school, working at the school, where every day was feeling the same. I was feeling a little burnt out. And so going into the consulting side, that's the part of the business now that I absolutely love.
So tell me a little bit about what's this done for you? Because I remember, it's not, I know some people know do it yourself, but you said done for you. What does that mean for those that have never heard that term before?
Yeah. So essentially, like, to give you an example of like what a relationship would look like with a client is, I'd have a small business owner and they have an offer that they're trying to push out. And so we'd meet once a month, figure out, okay, what are their goals for their month? What are they promoting? What do they want to talk about? We'd give some suggestions based on their brand and their target audience. And then my team would create the copy, the captions, the graphics, basically anything that their audience would see on social media. We would create for them the stories, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. We basically create everything that their clients would see for them. So they wouldn't physically necessarily have to do either anything or just not as much, because some of the clients were still pretty hands-on.
So in a nutshell, when we see these beautiful pages on Instagram that seem very organized and all the graphics are matching and the colors are matching and the font is matching, you would create those graphics for the client so they don't have to do it themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And you taught yourself how to do all of that.
Yeah, it was a lot of trial and error, but yes, I was self-taught with that.
Okay. So what's your favorite mediums? I know I'm big on Canva and I'm self-taught on Canva. Canva's yours too. So It's funny. I came across Canva during the pandemic as well. I do most of my own social media. But who would have thought that would have become a whole business for people because a lot of people don't understand how to make those graphics, so they will pay for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty dope. So now you were working in the school department, pivot, you left, and now you work full time for yourself.
Yes.
Any desire to quit? Do you ever feel like, I don't know if I would still want to do this?
So, full disclosure, I think we all feel like that at sometimes. Business owners, like, it's definitely easier to get a full-time job, just because it's guaranteed income coming in. And full disclosure, recently I actually took a part-time job back at the school department.
Really?
Yeah, recently in the last month, only because, so I feel like our priorities do change. Like, what I wanted 4 years ago is definitely not everything that I want today. And working from home served what I needed at that time. My son is now 5. He was 1 when I left. And being home after a while, now he's not home with me all the time. He's in school. Become kind of like a hermit, and it can get a little lonely working from home. And so for me, I was starting to crave more of that like in-person experience. Also, I did have I've had some highs and lows in my business over the past year, just like some business owners experience. This year has definitely been a more challenging one for me, revenue wise. And so to kind of fit my need of like being around people, and then also to kind of bring in a little bit more stability, I went back part-time. And I will tell you, that was a difficult decision to make, because it was a hit on my pride, because for a year, I mean, when I quit, I'm like, oh, I'm never going back. But my priorities changed, and I'm actually been enjoying actually going somewhere, not, most days, being around people every single day.
I think it's really important that we talk about that, because sometimes entrepreneurship and having a business is glamorized, and we can sort of shame people for having a job.
Yeah.
And that is really important to understand, that at the end of the day, working is still a job, even if you're working for yourself. And there are pluses and minuses to being an entrepreneur. So I think, I thank you for sharing that, because I think there is a lot of people who feel badly or don't want people to know if they have to get a job, or if there's some highs and lows. I think it's pretty smart to be able to do that pivot. So let's talk about some of the pain points. You've touched on a lot of them already. But what are some common pain points and mental health challenges that entrepreneurs often face, which can contribute to feelings of imposter syndrome and procrastination? So I think what we talked about in terms of isolation is a huge one, right? Not having community and working from home. After a while, for some people, you need connection. So what prompted you? Like, when did you know, like, oh, you know what? I need people. I need some people around me.
A couple things. So one for me is getting up and getting dressed in the morning. Like, that can play a big part in your mental health. For me personally, is that, I don't have to show up online every single day. And so there were many days where I didn't really like doll myself up like I used to. And by doing that, I was starting, it was hitting my confidence. It was starting to impact my confidence. I was finding more excuses to, not that you have to wear makeup, but like, I'm someone who loves to wear makeup and it makes me feel good. I was finding reasons like, whatever. And I was just starting to put less effort into myself and lesser effort into myself. And I could tell that by not taking pride in the way I was looking, it was starting to affect my health a little bit. And even like my love life a little bit, because when you start feeling down about the way you look, it can impact your relationship. And so for me, I think I needed an kind of something to force me to like get up, get dressed, get out of the house. And I can already tell like my mood has shifted as far as that goes. That is one piece. Another piece for me is that I think I needed like just that inhuman, like I needed to like talk to people like physically every day in person. Like, yes, I've developed so many friendships, connections, communities online, but it's not the same as doing it in person. It's like going to an in-person networking event is not the same as doing a virtual Zoom room. Like, the virtual Zoom rooms are awesome. They served us for the past, like, the first 3 years, like with COVID. But I think this past year, like, for me, I've been trying to force myself to like go to the in-person networking events, like meet people, see people in person, because you connect with people so differently. You get to read their body language. It's just a different feeling. I feel like you stay more front of mind, and that's something I like to talk with my clients about a lot. It's like a key aspect of what I teach my clients when it comes to showing up on social media. Is staying front of mind is like key. There's so many people that you're going to see and meet every single day online, but like, what is it about you that's going to make you memorable? And so how do you stay front of mind? And so when you meet people in person, there are going to be more things about you that helps you stay front of mind. Maybe it was the dress you're wearing, the earrings, the lipstick, like just your body language, you know, the way you laugh, whatever. Like I feel like it's a little bit easier to stay front of mind when you meet people in person. And so for me, I needed that connectivity. There's a lot of pieces to it, but just those two little things, it was affecting me by just being at home all the time.
You know, I ran across the post and it was saying to find 2 to 3 people, business owners that you can connect with at least once a month to just brainstorm and feed off of each other and collaboration over competition. I think the pandemic, a lot of us pivoted and we navigated it well. But then some people are like stuck in that place, and being behind the computer and online and just constantly bombarded with social media in general can create some feelings that we talked about earlier of comparison syndrome, right? So entrepreneurs are often comparing themselves to others in the industry, the peer group, which is leading to feelings of inadequacy as well. So being able to get out there and just like connect with people, one, you get to normalize that you're not alone. A lot of people don't know what they're doing or are trying to figure it out. And people can show up online because they have great people like you managing their social media and look really put together. And one of the reasons why I'm bringing a lot of you content creators on here is that it's not always the person that's being marketed that's doing the work, right? You guys are doing the research, the graphics look great, you're sourcing information, so it looks phenomenal. But somebody else is doing it for individuals. So you can be comparing yourself to this site or to this person, and it's a social media manager that's doing it all. And even down to writing the copy of what they say in their videos. So we just have to be mindful of who we're comparing ourselves to that's making us feel inadequate, not knowing that they got a team of people helping them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, and I don't do done for you anymore. Like I do more of the consulting side, but like that's a really good point to bring up, because not just comparison with how people look on social media, but I think one of the biggest things that jumps out for people is the financial aspect of how much people are actually making online, because people like to talk about their revenue. And I think people forget that everyone started at a different place when they started their business. If you're a woman in business, like, you don't know, does she have a spouse that helps support her business? Does she have a full-time job that's helping to fund her business? And this is technically her side hustle, or she has the 2 full-time jobs. When it comes to showing up on social media, can she afford to have, like you said, that team? And it makes it look like, oh, how is this person posting on social media 10 times a day and going in their stories and managing their client load, like, and yet I'm struggling to do these things. What am I doing wrong? People can start to doubt themselves, that maybe they're too lazy, they're not worthy, maybe this isn't for me. And they forget the aspects of, this person has a team, this person has the funds, this person maybe has maybe their spouse is tech savvy and they're helping them with it and they don't have to invest in it. This person may have a background that you didn't realize that they had before they were doing this, or they've been doing this for 10 years and you just started 6 months ago. Like, that whole, you can't compare their step 10 to your step 2 type of thing.
Correct. And I think too, one of the really important things is to think about, we're all a couple of steps ahead of somebody. So if you pick somebody online that's like 20 steps ahead of you, that can make you feel inadequate. But if you pick somebody that's at 0 at their first post, they're looking at you and saying, wow, I can't wait to get to where you are. And why do I really bring up a lot of these things? I think primarily people get stuck, or they're losing traction, or they could feel like they don't understand their purpose, or they can feel like, oh my God, I have a job and I should be starting my own business and I should be doing this. And I think these shoulda, woulda, coulda sometimes puts us out of a place of gratitude to be able to see our strengths, how far we've come, what we're doing right. Like it's just overwhelming. And when I think about my clients that are looking at what's happening around them and they feel like they haven't arrived, that they're not doing enough, they need to be doing more. This constant like hustle culture that we're in, that we got to keep on showing up, always show up a certain kind of way. We got to work harder, work harder, work harder, work harder, has made people not rest and lose some creativity too. Like there's nothing wrong with having a job. I think what happens is if you're miserable and you hate it, but I can even make some people love their jobs again by not comparing themselves to everyone else and being in a place of gratitude that you have employment. Sometimes that little switch changes everything.
Yeah, and I feel like too, it takes off some pressure. Like I know for me, that was the biggest thing. Like I recently was experiencing a situation online and I wanted to take a little bit of a break off showing up as much. I wanted to still serve my clients, but not feel as much of a pressure to bring in a bunch of new ones. And so in order to make my mental health a priority, I needed to be able to, okay, let me have the set fixed. I have my clients right now that brings in income. If I need to bring in more, I'm going to go ahead and get this part-time job. That's extra income that's coming in that I don't have to stress about, and I can just focus on my mental health. And then also like sometimes that pressure of I need to bring in more clients, I need to bring more clients, it can cause you to lose passion for why you even started what you're doing in the first place. Because there's so much pressure. And then also you brought up a good point earlier of, comparing, this person's doing all these things, the whole hustle culture. You have to understand what your lifestyle looks like. If you have kids, like if you're comparing yourself, because I see a lot of this because I work with a lot of moms, 90% of my clients are moms. And a lot of times they're comparing themselves to women who don't have children, or their children are 3 and 4, and that person's kid is like in high school. So of course their lifestyle is different. So their priorities are different. Their time management is going to be a little bit different. Or maybe you're a single mom and that person has a spouse. Of course, your situation is going to be different. And so I think sometimes we just kind of look at the overall success and compare it, and we forget you have no idea what's going on in that person's life. Also, just because someone looks like they have their stuff together doesn't mean they do. Because I've seen people that look like the happiest person in the world. We didn't know.
Talk about it.
Yeah, they're going through a divorce.
They're going through a lot. And, you guys, they probably wonder sometimes why I have certain topics, right? And I really want to like bring home things that people are talking about in their heads, or with their close friends, or maybe not, because sometimes you can't even talk about these things without people going, well, you have everything, right? And you have a business and you have a mate and you have this and you have that. So you got it all together. You shouldn't. But people are struggling. People are struggling to make everything sort of go. Showing up online, running a business, being a mom, being an entrepreneur. And a lot of times people are doing both a full-time job, their side hustle, being a wife, being a mom. It's a lot. And so that work-life balance is really, really, really a struggle. And I think we got to normalize it. I think we have to leave space for not things to be messy. So like the pressure to clean your house, and the pressure to have, all your bills paid on time, and to take a vacation, and, to have your body look a certain kind of way, and to be the best wife, and be the best mom, and to be the best business person. I once had a conversation with someone and they told me to look at a scorecard, or like a grading system, and to be okay with if you can't be excellent or have an A in every area of your life. So say your priority is you want to be a really good mom. You might be an A mom and a C business owner. And that might just be okay, right? Because that's your balance. Your C, your fair, is an A to somebody else. And as you said, if that person didn't have kids and everything else, it would look different. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy who said, show me somebody who's a mom with 4 kids and can do her business, take care of her husband, and then I'll be impressed. But if you have no children and you can work out every day, like, you don't have the same stresses as this person over here. So I think that's really important. But you guys are tuned into the Urban Heat at 98.1 FM. This is Conversations with Coach La. And tonight we're really talking about how to balance it all and how entrepreneurs, especially, are unmasking success, because there's a lot of glamorization of entrepreneurship. And I don't think we really look at, like, there's pros and cons of being over here running a business too. It's not all pretty. And some of us do. I have a W-2 job along with having to practice. I do a lot of things, and it's necessary because you have to diversify. You can't have all your eggs in one basket. But I will say, when I was working, I learned that there from getting laid off, getting fired. Like, a job isn't a guarantee, which is what brought up the whole entrepreneurship in the first place. So we talked about work-life balance. We talked about financial pressures. We talked about isolation. But what about fear of failure? So how is that played into your navigating being an entrepreneur?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. So, first of all, I mean, I'll share mine and then the things I've experienced with my clients. So, fear of failure. I mean, this is something that kind of comes up for me all of the time. Whether it's okay, I create a social media post, is it gonna perform well, right? As simple as that. Or creating a new offer, are people gonna join it? I've been in business for over 6 years, like in total, and I still question myself all of the time. And I know there's plenty of amazing, successful people that are super confident and they still question themselves. I think that I kind of live with the motto, if it doesn't scare you, it's not as exciting enough. And so I think that's one of the things that I actually do enjoy about, like, having a business is, you know, that fear piece, I think can drive us a little bit, because when you do overcome the fear of something that you've been putting off, like going, speaking on a radio show, or, speaking on stage, I feel like it's exhilarating when you overcome something, even if you don't necessarily hit the goal that you aimed for. Like, if you push to promote something, you wanted 10 people to join and maybe 2 people joined, but at least you did it. Like, overcoming the fear and actually putting it out there, like, that's an amazing feeling. And so I experience this all of the time. I think the fear of rejection sometimes can come up for me a lot, is if someone doesn't like me, if someone says no. One of the things that one of my mentors has said to me is, if you're not hearing no, like, if you're not hearing a lot of no's, then you're not asking enough. You're not putting yourself out there enough. You should be hearing, you should be hearing no more than you hear yes. So if you think about a lot of famous people, they heard no's for years and years and over again before they start getting those yeses. And that's something I try to remind myself. And you don't always have to take everything so personal, like, just in business. And I think sometimes we take things so personally. I know for me in the past, I've taken things very, very personal. When someone says no, you start thinking about your self-worth. You start thinking about, oh, am I actually as smart as I think I am? Do I actually know what I'm talking about? And you can question something that you've maybe done over and over again just because that person said no. I've had clients who have experienced the same thing. They're so scared of rejection that they would rather not do something in fear of, like, people saying no to them. And it can be really challenging to try to push someone past their fears. But like I said, when you actually put yourself out there, even if you fail, like, I feel like it's an exhilarating feeling, but it's something that I think that's always going to come up in business over and over again, especially if you're trying something new.
And I think, we have to think about reframing failure as a learning opportunity rather than a reflection of personal worth. I think if we all started off as a beginner somewhere, and leaving space to be able to make a mistake, to get it wrong, to do trial and error is part of the journey, is part of the process, it's part of success. And if we think we're going to just get it right the first time, every time, where do we get that philosophy or that perspective from? Because everything we've done up until this point, no matter where you are, you had to learn something. And I always use the analogy about a baby that goes through the stages, right? You go through crawling, and then you start pulling yourself up on things, but every baby stumbles. Some of them, yes, they get it a little bit quicker and maybe they have less of a wobble, but most children trip, fall, scrape their knee, have that moment where they're like stumbling, and nobody says, you know what, you're never going to get walking, stop. And then we get through these other stages in our life, and all of a sudden people say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't try that anyway. You failed. Why would you do that again? Or we get scared that we're going to fail or someone's going to reject us, so we don't move forward. But I always tell people, think back to that moment. People encourage you. They go, come on, try again, get up, try again. You got to have that inner talk to say, get up, try again, get up, try again. What did you learn from that? Okay, I'm not going to do it that way this time. I'm going to try it this way. Embrace growth, right, as a mindset, which is why I started talking about betting on self. You want to understand that challenges are nothing but just setbacks or just opportunities to grow and to develop. And I think if we do that, what it does is it creates space to be okay with things not going okay. Like, I think one of the things I learned how to do is to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Like, I choose growth instead of convenience and being comfortable.
I think you gotta be, as you were talking, I'm thinking, I feel like one thing that I've always said to myself is I'm almost like stubborn when it comes to my goals. Like, I was again, I'll go back to the multi-level marketing. I failed so many times with those things. I invested money, maybe wasted some money with some things. I look back and I laugh at some of the things that I did. I'm like, why did I even think I could do that? Or why did I even try that?
What's the craziest network marketing business that you try? And I'm gonna tell you one of the ones I did that I was like, did I really do that? But I did, though. Without telling the name of it, but like the product that you sold.
It was a health program. I spent more money like putting into it and attending like summits and stuff than I did making from it. And I didn't even complete half of the programs that I was trying to sell. So like it was just I don't know how to explain it. I look back and I just laugh at some of the things that I was pushing out because the photos that I shared, they were so cringy, and the products that I shared, I don't even think I like really liked them as much as I was trying to make myself believe that I liked them, if that makes sense. What's funny though is I think the craziest business though that I ever tried was I tried starting a maternity line, like a clothing maternity line. And I didn't realize like how much work there is that goes into like designing a piece of clothing. And yeah, like there was so much to it that I was already like so deep into it that I ended up realizing, yeah, this isn't for me.
Right.
And I put so much effort into it, but then I had to just kind of admit, am I willing to invest more? Am I willing to put my time and energy into it? And I realized I wasn't. But I mean, it was a learning experience for me. And I built a really great community around it. I gained a ton of marketing experience from that. So it was a great opportunity for me. It was a learning opportunity, but for me, that was probably like my worst business decision.
But you know what? I love, and I think circling back, was it really your worst business decision? Because it gave you so many strategies, marketing strategies and do's and don'ts that you can use in the future. And that's how I look at every business that I tried. But I think the one that I always look back on that I'm like, wow, I really did that. I was putting people into fajas, right? I sold what they call body magics, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, so I pretty much was just helping people put their flesh into this garment and squeezing them in it and having them jump into it and pushing people's bellies and squeezing them. Like, I still look back and I'm like, I was getting people into these daggone these garments, and I was selling these body magics, baby. I was selling them. And now that I really have realized people wear these when they have like BBLs and stuff, I don't think I knew what I was doing, but it's pretty much just what people wear after they have surgery, so I was just helping people move their tissue all around. So that was probably the wildest network marketing business that I had, having those body magic parties and betting people that I could get them into these garments that looked small. I would get them in there.
I hadn't even heard of that one before. That's a new one for
me. Yes. And but I was using the company name, but those that know. So I've tried a little bit of everything from technology to what do you call it? Health and wellness products to art. Like, I have been a part of several network marketing businesses, but it gave me great sales skills, and I would say people skills. Somebody told me I could sell. This is kind of bad. I could sell hell. I was like, that is awful.
Oh my
But
gosh.
you know, I could get you to go right on down there. I said, that is awful. Did you really just say that? I could sell. That's just bad. But I think one of the other things that comes up, and we talked a little bit about this, was perfectionism. Thinking everything needs to be perfect. How has that played into your path and also your clients when you think about consulting? Do they get to this place of with you that you make these, I don't want to say promises, but you're offering results and it doesn't go as planned? You know, is that a challenge? Do people like put that pressure on you to be perfect too?
Oh, yeah. So two things I think you just asked me is, first of all, with the perfectionism. I run into that all the time with clients, especially when it comes to physically showing up on social media. And what I mean by that is, like, I work with a lot of personal brands. So like my clients are the face of the brand. It's not like a logo or a company name. Like, they're the face of the brand, whether it's named after them or not. Like, people buy from them because of them. And so with that being said, they've got to show up. Like, regardless if they hire another, like an agency to do social media management for them, right? They still have to show up. And so I work with 99% of women, and, you know, not every single woman I work with is like this, but we can be really hard on ourselves appearance wise with the way that we look. That's what often comes up is, oh, my hair. Oh, you know, just the way they're dressed, right? Or, I didn't like my background, or like, you know, oh, I was in my car. Like, sometimes it's like they have to have the perfect background. Their hair has to look a certain way. Their makeup has to look a certain way. Their clothes have to look a certain way. And yes, like there's importance to it when it comes to like staying aligned with your brand. Like, obviously, if you have like a luxury brand, there is a certain appearance that you want to have when you show up. But that's why like authenticity is so powerful, is that if you're going to have a luxury brand, then that means that you're someone who has more of a luxury lifestyle. Like, you wear those types of clothes, you have that types of house, or that's just like your norm. It's not something that you have to put a persona on. And so with my clients, that's one of the challenges that we usually face, is they have this idea of what they want their brand to look like, but in reality, that's not them. Like, because they're almost like, you know how we idolize some people online. We're like, oh, I like how she does that, and I like how she does that. That's what I want. Help me create a social media strategy. Help me show up on social media like them. And to a certain extent, sure, like we can use some ideas of like, you know, how some topics and stuff maybe they're talking about. But if that's not you, if you don't wear clothes like that, if you're not bubbly, right? I'm not going to force you to be a bubbly person, right? If you're more monotone, then that's how you talk. The people that are attached to you are going to be drawn to you. Yeah. And so
that's a tough one, don't you think, though?
It's tough, but sometimes the biggest challenge, I think, is just getting people to own up to who they really are. And it takes time. It's not like I have a session with someone and then all of a sudden they're like, oh yeah, that's not me. I'm going to start showing up this way. It takes time. And sometimes it takes me challenging them to be like, okay, this is what you said you want to do. This is what I want you to do for the next 5 days. And then the next time we meet, if they didn't do it, it kind of comes down to, okay, well, why? What happened? And so sometimes that's like that whole coaching thing is, you could say something to someone and it may not hit them the same way as them saying it out loud to themselves. Oh, well, I said I was going to do that, but you know what? I don't even like wearing my hair down 5 days out of the week. Okay, so then why did you say you were going to do that? Or, you know, I don't enjoy this activity. So then why did we say we're going to do that? Okay, so maybe I'm going to start doing it this way. And so it's kind of like they have to come to a self-realization of what's their actual brand supposed to look like? Who are they? What's authentic to them? And it kind of helps with that whole perfectionism thing, where they don't feel like they have to be perfect, because none of us are perfect. But when you're authentic, it actually takes less pressure to show up when you're just yourself. Like, however you look every day, if you're supposed to go live or do a story, like right now, like just pick up your phone, however you look is however you look. That's authentic. That's your brand. And if you're not trying to fake it, it's it's not gonna be fake, essentially, right? And so that I experienced that a lot.
This is such a great point, right? Because if you're still trying to figure out who you are, and part of I have this great idea, or I have this service, or I have something that I want to provide, but is this appropriate business for me to show this piece of myself? And if I don't show this piece, am I being authentic? If I only want to show this piece of myself, I think that is a challenging dynamic, because we say be professional, right? You need to be professional. You need to show up professionally. And then we also have it where folks are just doing anything. They're coming on any kind of way. So when you're coaching people, how do you keep both, you be authentic, but you also have to be mindful of what you're trying to do, which is attract a client or be professional? And is that authenticity going to ruin your brand?
That's a good question. So I find that, so the whole professionalism piece, right? That can mean different things to different people. And the one thing I like about social media is there is a little less pressure when it comes to professionalism. Like, there are millionaires online who show up online every day in a hoodie and sweatpants, and that's them, you know, and people love it. That's just who they are, because they are relatable. That's the biggest thing, is who do you want to work with? How are you relatable, right? And I find for me, I have to really figure out like what's going to attract my ideal client, what's going to feel relatable to them. So like for me, like I have different pillars that I know I talk about. When I show up online, it's usually one of the different like topics. These are the 5 things that are relatable to my audience. And when I'm showing up, if I think about those 5 pillars, it helps me to make sure that I'm not going off, oh, this has nothing to do with my audience. This is not going to relate to them. If I can kind of stay in tune with those 5 pillars, I can make sure that I'm staying like relatable to them, but also staying authentic, because I'm not trying to do what someone else is doing, because there's so much influence online every day. I see someone new and I can get inspired, but I have to kind of come to self and say to myself, okay, is this what my audience, does my audience actually want this? Is this something that I really want? And so I think a lot of self-reflection is really important, because it's really easy to like want to I don't want to say copy, but like replicate what some other people are doing, because you see they're successful and they're having so much success with it. But you have to like, I think really, it's almost like having like a value system, right? Really say to yourself, what are my values in my business, to remind yourself to make sure you don't share something on social media that is completely out of your value system. If you're not someone who talks about politics all the time, right, then you know you're not going to talk about a certain topic, because that's not what your people want. That's not who you are. You don't talk about politics. So if there's a topic that other people are talking about, you're probably just going to stay quiet about it, because sure, you could talk about it, but your people don't care about it, and you don't care about it. You don't care to talk about it. And so I think sometimes you really need to understand, like, what are the things that my audience really wants, and what are my values? That's what kind of keeps me like to be like a real person, and to make sure like I'm showing up as the same person as online as I am when I meet them like on Zoom or in person.
I think that's a great point. I think once you sort of, when you're being authentic, you will be the same in all the places, although you're not showing everything. So like my brother was listening to the show, and he said, well, it doesn't sound like you, but it sounds like you. Like right now, you're just my sister, but he said there's pieces where you are laughing and you make jokes, but you don't talk to me in like this expert voice. And I was like, you really think it? He's like, yeah, you got this like, orator voice, this radio voice, and you don't use that voice all the time. And I was like, I feel like I use my same voice, but I do have to project and pronounce my words, different things like that. So that's true. Well, I want to give a couple shout out to some people. Shout out to Miss Sharika, my besties on here. Miss Opal, thank you. Hey, Ray, I can't wait for your show tomorrow. And as I told you guys, you're tuned into the Urban Heat 98.1 FM, and this is Conversations with Coach La. We come on every Sunday, and we have really down-to-earth conversations about life, and the things that happen when life starts lifing that gets in a way that can impact our mental health. So everything is a topic. Anything is up for grabs on this show. We talk about everything. So perfectionism. Some of the things that you guys can do if this is something is set realistic standards. And that's what we kind of talk about when we talk about values and understanding your authenticity. But knowing what that is allows you to stay in line. But most importantly, practice some self-compassion. Like this isn't a cookie cutter process, right? You might have these moments that you have a rant or you're off brand or you got your hair in a messy bun and you don't have makeup on. I think audiences need to see that. And I think what has happened is that people want to know that you're a real person, right? And that it's a real brand. And I think about a lot of the clothing stores, for instance, right? There's so many people who are stealing people's pictures and videos, and then they're putting up boutiques, and it's not the person. And if you are following this, you're like, I know that picture is not your picture, and that's somebody else's picture. So I think that there's a certain level of, we know what brands, and with that authenticity is saving some people from getting scammed because you know your brand, because they are so authentic. So yeah, I love that. I love that for us. I love that we are able to be our authentic selves. So thinking about your bet on self moment. So we talked a lot already, but when you take down the road of memory lane and knowing what a bet on self moment is those moments that you really decide that if not now, then when, and if not who, then me, if not me, then who. When did you have those moments in your business or your career where you feel like, you know what, you really stepped out on yourself and you put all your chips on you?
So there's like two moments that I think of. Back when I was like 20, I don't know, like 22, 23, this was when I was first introduced to like the entrepreneur space. I was someone who never even considered like starting a business. I was in the foster care system when I was a teenager and when I was younger. And I'm someone who, I guess you could say, like kind of overcame some of like the odds. I did graduate high school. I did go to college. You know, I was doing all the things that I felt like I needed to do. Essentially, my goal in life was like, I didn't grow up with great parents. So I'm like, as long as I'm not like my parents and I don't do certain things in my life, like I'm successful. And my goal when I was young was I want to be able to create a life so great that my kids can go off and have like these incredible lives, like make six figures in my mind. Like back then it was like, that was like the goal, make six figures, be able to travel here, travel there, buy this big house. In my mind, and like when I was in my early 20s, I didn't actually see myself having those things. It was more so like, if I can just not do what my parents did and set myself up for success so my children can be successful, I've made it, right? Mm-hmm. And so one day I was introduced, that was actually one of the first multi-level marketing companies that I joined. There was this woman who had a very similar background to me. And she was living the life that I envisioned my one day children living. She built this business from scratch. And she was like, she was making multiple six figures. She had this house. She was traveling. Like, she was like just everything that I could never imagine myself, I guess, being, because I never even like thought that was in the cards for me, because no one in my life, in my personal life, had shown me that's possible for me. I had no one in my personal life. And so it made me realize, like, I almost feel like I was setting my goals like small, like limiting myself, because I had that background that I came from. I felt like that's not me. Maybe my kids someday, but that's not me. And so she gave me this new way of thinking, like, oh, I can actually have those things. Like, I don't have to come from money. I don't have to have like certain, my parents, whatever. Just because I'm a foster kid, like, doesn't mean that my life has to be, I guess, basic, if whatever. But I can have those things. And it was like a really aha moment for me, where I was like, you know what, I'm going to try. And that's when I started like venturing into entrepreneurship and really allowing myself to dream like crazy dreams, like like crazy possibilities of what I wanted for my life. And so that at that moment I decided, like, why not me, you know? And the other moment that I can think of is back when I did leave my job that first time back in 2020. That was really scary. We had a baby, you know, I had just replaced my income at the school from, you know, from the school department. And with business, like I had like 6 clients, but you can lose those clients overnight. Like it wasn't guaranteed. And so that was a really scary moment. Actually, I didn't even announce that I left my job for like 3 months because I regretted my decision. Like a couple weeks after that, I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And then eventually I came to like own it because my business was still doing really well. But it was just, the first moment was actually like believing that I could have more when I never even considered the idea before. And then the second time was like betting on myself that, okay, I can do this. Like I've already done it. I can keep doing it. So those are the 2 moments that kind of come to mind for me.
Super dope. You know, bet on self stands for believe, empower, and transform. And it really is derived from a growth mindset perspective and cognitive behavior therapy, which is all about thoughts. And that mantra, if you say it all the time, you know what, I'm going to bet on myself today. How will I bet on myself today? What will I do that will help me be 1% better than I was yesterday? You start to really transform what you attract. You start to transform how you show up and what you do. And you also start to really tap in and self-reflect so that you can be your authentic self. Because often we are mimicking and copying just because of how we were raised and what we've learned in our environment. All has had an influence on our values and our belief systems. And I think when we bet on self, we start to think about, we don't have to be what we've seen, and we don't have to embrace or internalize. Shout out to one of my other co-facilitators, James Lambert III from Third Exposure. And he said, you don't have to internalize, you can metabolize. And I was like, yo, that's a dope way of conceptualizing, taking in information. So you allow it to come inside of you, but you extract it out. If you think about, you know, the way we use the bathroom and everything else, we metabolize food and then it comes out. So you don't have to be what you've seen. And I love when you talk about your story of being a foster child and being able to kind of sit back and go, yeah, but I don't have to be here. This doesn't have to be my life. This doesn't have to be how my story ends. You get to define it. So we talk about narrative therapy, writing your own story and deciding who you want to be. So I challenge everybody that's listening to tonight's show is that, how do you have authority, right? How do you take back your power in terms of what is your self-narrative? Who are you, right? Who are you and who do you want to be? Because you can become. And I know some people like, oh, social media lets people, you know, get on here and become whoever they want to be. And I know people in real life. I mean, do you really though? Because again, people are deciding what they want you to see. And sometimes they're letting you see their worst self, not their best self, but their worst self. So I think we all can, you know, take a step back and sort of give each other a little bit more grace and practice some more self-compassion. So we got 2 minutes. Let's tell people about the event in January, which is coming up on the 19th. They'll be able to meet you in person and attend one of your workshops. It's called Breaking Barriers. That's going to happen right here in Boston. And tell them what can they expect and how they can find you.
Yeah, so at this event, I'm actually going to be talking about how to stay front of mind when you meet people. And especially, we're going to talk about specifically at networking events. Because of this conference, you're going to be meeting people. I want you to be able to leave, my workshop, understanding like when you meet people that day, how do you stay front of mind? How do you walk away making new connections? How do you show up as the authority? How do you have more confidence when you approach people and meet people that you've never met before, and talk about your business unapologetically? Mm-hmm. So that's what we're going to be talking about. As far as where can you find me? You can find me on Instagram at the Krissy Ferreira. You can find me on Facebook as Krissy Ferreira, and you can go to my website, KrissyFerreira.com.
Yes, and it's all streaming on the screen. It's also in the chat. So you guys really need to connect with her if you're looking for somebody. to, you know, help you manage your social media. You know, if you have the funds, why not hire somebody to help you out? If it's not your forte, it's okay. You know, like everybody, that's not what they're best at. So, you know, get some help. Oh, yes, here we go.
The Urban Heat. Expect the unexpected. Unorthodox radio from Boston and beyond. Heat981fm.com and iHeartStation.
So y'all know what to do. See you next week for another episode of Conversations with Coach La. Tuned into the Urban Heat. Make sure you tune in tomorrow for the Morning Cafe. Y'all have a good night. Krissy, say bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Jams.